You're hanging with Hudson and Aly and a special guest. This is a first for me, talking to a creator of a show. We have Jason Moody here. You've created the show, Gabriel and the Guardians.
Yeah.
Jason, welcome to RadioU Mornings.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you about Gabriel and the Guardians.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm glad we get to do this. First of all, Gabriel and the Guardians, we actually found out about it a little before we got in touch with you because Peabod, who we love here on RadioU, he made a song. We just played it in the Battle of the Buzz earlier this week.
Let's go.
Called Head First. That was made for this show.
Yeah.
But let's start at the beginning, Jason. How did you even get into creating an anime show in the first place?
Well, I think as you do, you first work at J.P. Morgan Chase.
That's the regular pipeline.
50% of the people in Columbus work at the big J.P. Morgan Chase building on Corners. So I had been working there for 15 years as a media developer and doing training. But when I was a kid, I really wanted to make cartoons. Like, grew up with Dragon Ball and Gargoyles and X-Men, the original X-Men, and Batman the Animated Series. And so all that stuff just sort of created this sort of tapestry of DNA within me. And I love to draw. And I was pretty convinced that I was like, that's what I'm going to do when I grow up. And then I grew up and I was like, that's not what I'm going to do, obviously, because that's really hard to do from being a person in the Midwest with no connections to the industry at all. But COVID happened, and don't tell Chase, but didn't have a whole lot of work to do for like the first year of COVID. It was just like, okay, I got my work done in a few hours. and so my wife and I were listening to a podcast called The Bible Project, Tim Mackey.
Yeah.
And just fell in love with these texts, these ancient Hebrew texts that are known as Genesis and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I just began to imagine this mythology, the cultures and the tales that come out of some of those texts, particularly this interesting story of the giants. If you go to Genesis 6, you'll read, in the days of Noah, there were giants that walked the earth, and that just captured my imagination.
Yeah.
I grew up going to church, but I had never heard that in the Sunday school version of, and
Not
it was
a lot
like
of sermons on that, I feel.
Yeah, and so I was like, man, there are giants in the Noah story? Like, I've only ever heard of the Goliath one. And so, doing a deep dive in this idea in this world of the Nephilim and the Watchers, and then this idea of angels and archangels, and that was just fascinating to me. And so out of that came this concept. What if you could take some of these really, honestly, these are the oldest stories in our world. We're talking about Genesis particularly is these are Paleo-Hebrew, Canaanite, Sumerian, cultures that were tossing these tales back and forth, because you'll find the flood narrative in the Sumerian texts.
Right.
And so we're talking about the origin of our species campfire stories, right, that have been written down and preserved in these amazing, beautiful ways. And so I was like, how is it that there isn't already some big franchise that's doing Mesopotamian mythology, right? And telling stories from this sort of worldview. And, if you grew up in the church, you kind of see the Bible as these like people in robes, right? It was all very, even the old stories are all very Roman in their, Greek and Roman in their presentation. If you look at Ben-Hur, some of the classic epic Hollywood films that are biblical, it's all sort of Greco-Roman clothing. But man, when you really do the deep dive of we're talking probably 2500 BC is when Noah existed.
Right.
And so this is a guy who lived in the world of extreme paganism, ziggurats, temples to Mesopotamian goddesses like Ishtar, and that's just a different world.
Right.
And so that's where this all began to kind of coalesce. And
that is awesome.
That is so cool. Well, one of the things I love about it is in the trailer for your show Guardians or Gabriel and the Guardians is you list off a lot of credits for different people that are involved with your show. So how did you get the team together to create this?
Right, being just a dude from the Midwest. With
Right, like this is impressive.
Yeah,
you know?
so I think that one, being tenacious and not letting the fact that there are definitely in industries there are some walls and gates and things like that. But if you're not from that and you're willing to get beat up a little bit, you can kind of plow through a lot of those gates and walls. And I had a lot of guys that I'd send messages. I made a pitch. I had this idea. I was like, this is something. I'm onto something. And I just started sending messages out to anybody I could. I'd look up people on, IMDb, producers, and then I'd find them on LinkedIn or Instagram, and I'd DM. I'd just slide right into those DMs. And mostly I got nothing, no response. Right. And then if there was a response, it was like, you need an agent, dude. You can't just. Nobody told you can't just message people. But if you do it enough, and you are persistent enough. And the way I looked at it was every time I got to know the probability of the next thing being a yes went up, right? Just math. Yeah. And so eventually I did get a yes. I got a producer who said, hey, you know what? I'm feeling gracious today. I'll look at your pitch deck. And he messaged me back 10 minutes later and was like, hey, here's my phone number. Give me a call. We got on a call and he said, this is really cool, actually. I think you're onto something. And then he sort of opened doors and guided me a little bit for 6 months. I mean, just with nothing. He didn't want anything in return. He just made connections, helped me out. And that's kind of how I got onto that path. And eventually I came to a partner named, two partners, David Cunningham, who had worked on a show called Superbook, and Wing Feather. And then he introduced me to Al Moore, who, I mean, this guy is Disney legend. He worked on Lion King. He worked on, Beauty and the Beast. He worked on Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah, the classics.
And he just loved the idea as well. And so he came on, and together we just started building something right here. We just built a studio right here in Ohio.
That's
awesome.
So cool.
Yeah. I was hoping you'd say you got it together by just sitting around, because that's what I'm good at doing. Sounds like a lot of hard work.
Oddly, it is a lot of sitting around on a computer. And typing a lot.
And doing stuff,
I mean, listen, all of this sounds very exciting. We're talking with Jason Moody, the creator of the new show, Gabriel and the Guardians. It's a new anime show. But I got to be straight with you, Jason. I've never really watched any anime.
That's okay, I'll forgive you.
I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right. Anime. Yeah. Anyway, so convince somebody like me that, give me the pitch that somebody that's not normally into anime, why would this be a show they might want to check out?
Yeah, probably isn't. No, I'm just kidding. I think that what we're doing is we're trying to take very classic storytelling approaches. So, the anime storytelling style isn't for everybody. There's a certain soap opera dramatization in anime that's over the top and oh, my brother, But I think that if you've ever heard of a show like Avatar: The Last Airbender, it's anime inspired, but man, the storytelling is just very cool. And very just traditional storytelling with great action. And so for our story, I was inspired by that show as well. And so taking that approach of I think if you like Star Wars, if you like, any movie out of the MCU, we've definitely aimed to try to be in that space. Something that is kind of feels for all ages, but is, action packed and has some story, has some drama. And then it's pulling from this ancient cosmic story of light and dark.
That's awesome.
It's working.
You might be convincing him.
Yeah.
Well, I did think it was interesting because I checked out the first episode that you sent our way, which is free to watch on Angel Studios.
It is.
And that's awesome. And I also saw a clip of talking about what's coming up next. And I thought it was really interesting that one of the things mentioned is that fans can actually have quite a bit of an impact on what comes up with Gabriel and the Guardians. Can you explain more of how that exactly is working with the future of the show?
So this show, we called it the first fan-owned anime. And so because Because what it is really is that we did a crowdfund and we raised $500,000 from fans.
Wow.
To kind of get ourselves started. And then from that, we continued to just want to like, how do we include fans? How do we make this feel? And so everything we're doing, we're really doing it in view.
Yeah.
We've recorded all of our records with voice actors. We do all kinds of contests. So we have a Discord. And so on the Discord, the fans can be very engaged and very active, and we do polls. And the last thing we did was we let them choose the design of a monster in an upcoming episode.
Nice.
Put out different designs and said, which one do you guys like the best?
Yeah.
And the one that won, that's actually the one that will be in the episode.
That's
awesome.
awesome.
We're doing voice contests. We're doing all kinds of things that people actually, the fans will actually not just own it, but actually become co-creators.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's so cool. And so that's kind of like what the future of the show is looking like. So give us a timeline as far as when maybe new episodes will be coming out. Do you have that set in stone yet?
Yeah, so we're hoping to have more episodes before the end of the year. This pilot was really a way that we could get the brand out,
Yeah.
and kind of get the word out and go, hey, we think we have something. We think we made something really cool. We want to present it to fans and to people that we think might like it. And if you do, please come and be a part of this community. We're working diligently. We've got 13 episodes that have been written. We've got 6 episodes that have been recorded. We have storyboards and animatics for that. And we're beginning the production process to get the rest of the season. But something really cool is that we just finished a deal with a really cool up-and-coming comic book company called Ripaverse.
Okay.
Guy named Eric July kind of did something similar to what Angel did, which was started this sort of indie comic book published, kind of against all odds and against the big machine of the big, Marvel DC.
Yeah.
He kind of built this comic book. And so we signed with them, and they're publishing, hopefully in May, the first issue 1 of an ongoing Gabriel and the Guardians manga series or comic book series will start. And so you'll actually be able to engage with the story because it's going to be telling the same, just in true manga fashion.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of pre-telling what you'll actually see in the episodes. And so you'll be able to, if you watched episode 1 and you're like, what happens next?
Right.
Go pick up an issue of the manga because you're going to be able to see what happens next.
There we go. Jason Moody, the creator of Gabriel and the Guardians. So the first episode is free to watch on Angel Studios. And then you've got the manga issues coming out starting in May, you said?
Yep.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Jason. We're really excited. And thanks for taking the time with us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
All
you.
right.
While you're here, you should watch more of our videos and subscribe so you don't miss what we do next.